the NUUU, Nations United, UNUversal University, is dedicated to supporting and providing a real purpose and real awareness with the all-natural environment, supporting all of us. First comes this earth, with food and rainforests, and to protect what is still here. The following information was sourced from the YouTube video The Forested Garden. What is a food forest? Discover permaculture with Jeff Lawton. The full video is available in the links. We're familiar with forests as an ecosystem with their great diversity of animals and plants, fungi, etc., all harmonizing together and interreacting in many layers, designed by nature as a system in perfect balance. It is also a system that produces food. The majority of the elements in that system are productive, and that's what is referred to as a food forest. By understanding how nature designs forest systems so they're self-maintaining and replicating, we can model that system with productive species. So we can produce food in the most sustainable way, with the minimum amount of input for the maximum amount of output, and anywhere in the world. This is a food forest system that we can actually design and work with in long-term and permanent situations. All forests have layers. You start off with a canopy layer, which is the top of the forest. Then you have understory layers, and under those you have bush and shrub layers, going down to herbaceous layers, which are non-woody plants. Then you have a root yield, plants that have large starchy roots. On the ground you have ground covers, and you also have a vertical layer of climbers. All forests have those layers. In the tropics, you can have emergent palms and underlayer palms. You have slight variations in different climates, but you have a basic set of layers that occupy all the space. When we decide to create a food forest, we put that layering system into action to our benefit for production and maintenance food function. In the subtropics, as an example, you can have tamarillo as an understory, taro and cocoa yam and cassava as the root yield. That changes from climate to climate. Then you have understory productive trees like feijoa, guava, and citrus, and large herbs like bananas. Then you have support species like the ice cream bean and casuarina. Then large trees that continue to support the forest by cycling nutrients. You also have understory nitro fixers like the acacias, the leucaena, and the casa, and our busier species. All really good, fast functioning, fast carbon pathways that can be chopped to the ground for nitrogen mulch. And the space that they're occupying can then be taken up by the productive species. These are all space occupiers in a system that's incredibly stable when all the layers are completely occupied. We can plant food forests by planting support species at the same time as the fruit trees, and managing the support species to shoulder and boost the productive species. Or we can just plant the pioneer support species until we get a stable canopy. But we don't want to go the other way around, to start with the productive species and work hard with lots of input to keep them in a healthy state. The support species do the work for us. It can be up to 95% of the mass in the early years. The legume trees and the mulch-producing trees that produce the biomass. We prune these, and these trees shed nitrogen to the soil because they are classic pioneers, and most are nitrogen-fixing species. In other words, they have bacteria partners in the soil that take nitrogen from the air in the soil and bring it into their plant bodies. The trees then eventually die, and that nitrogen is added to the soil. We can speed that process up. We can sacrifice those species with good timing after we've put them into relative placement. So over time, the species we sacrifice open up opportunities for our productive species. They shelter, support, and provide the fertilizer, the soil conditioning, and the humus. So we stack the system in space, but prune in relation to time. We wait till the time of the year when there is more rainfall than evaporation, after the period when it's been dry and the evaporation is higher than rainfall. Then we need shade, and we leave the shade up. But as soon as the rainfall gets heavier and higher than the evaporation, we can start to cut and open up light avenues and space for our productive species to take up the gap. Over time, when we get to establishment, we have less and less mass and pioneer support species, and more mass in productive species. We end up with a reversal of mass. We have 95% productive and 5% in support. We don't just stack in space, but in time, and we speed up the process. We manipulate the forest so it grows in our favour towards productive species. You're working with the cycles of the forest within a climate, so you're feeding the soil with the fallen forest and designing the way the forest falls. Animals can help us establish food forests. We can graze with larger animals, then they have to be out of the way when we put in the small plants. We can put in poultry, chickens and ducks. Then they can prepare the ground. Later on, when the trees are up, we can bring in maintenance cycles of chickens and ducks to speed the system up and use our animals to gain an advantage. Ducks can eat most of the green material, flatten out the grasses, manure the ground, and condition the soil. Now it's ready for replanting with the support species and interplants, and fruit trees where there are gaps. This is then an animal interaction to a replant, which can be done at any time there's a slip-up with maintenance. The production of soil is constant. The fertility of soil is constantly increasing. The diversity of production is non-stop. With a food forest system, you have a system that self-replicates over time. There are no systems that produce as much per square meter for the smallest amount of input. Food forests work anywhere, and provide permanent security worldwide, supplying all our needs and causing no damage whatsoever. Thank you for listening to this video. If you want to know more, become involved and network with us as we branch out and connect with worldwide initiatives, groups, and individuals involved in the supporting of the all-natural environment, with funding that will soon be available. Contact USA Dean Val and UK Kevin Smith on Facebook and YouTube, or through the website provided in the links, DuaneTheGreatWriter.net. Join us for weekly environment awareness Skypes every Sunday at 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. For those who have the awareness to see what is actually taking place here with all the natural devastation, which is also purposely planned by the WorldKontrollers, you now have the real opportunity to step up and do something with those who also care about your planet Earth. Duane Lee Heppner has created the Nations United UNUversal UNUversity, which completely entails the all-natural environment everywhere, and a real education that has real value and that far surpasses any commonly created indoctrinating educational system that does not focus on what sustains all of us naturally. Real survival makes sense with everything here that is self-sustaining. We see it makes sense to create rainforests with an abundance of food-producing plants and trees for people and animals to survive and thrive.